I am Jason Githens, Principal PM Manager from Microsoft on the Configuration Manager / Intune team, Enterprise Client Management.
And I'm not on.
You're not on.
Now I am. My name is Kent. I work for Cortex, based out of Copenhagen in Denmark, and I spent most of my time working with Configuration Manager, and has been doing so since '96.
Okay.
It means that I'm old. It means that I'm old.
Yes. You still look good, sir.
That's correct.
So so this is probably an interesting title session for you guys because Kent, what's the top data center feature we've added in Config Manager past 5 years?
The past 5 years?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Nothing. And the last time we had a session with this title was probably 1996. So we, that was a little jab at ourselves for obviously a lot of you are here because it's an interesting topic to you. So let's just jump right into the agenda for today. So from an overview standpoint, we're going to just talk about general data center management overview. I'm going to go through some of the feedback that we've heard from a recent poll we did of 650 customers to ask about how they're using Config Manager in the database, and we were honestly shocked by the result of that survey. And along with the feedback we hear from a lot of folks in this room, we are we're investing in that area again. I want to talk about, you hear a lot about DSC and then settings management. I still fall back to DCM, but settings management and Config Manager to try to explain the differences between those, because I think people are wondering, well, do I use DSC? Do I use DCM? And I want to really explain the reasons you would use one over the other. And then, thankfully, since we haven't done much in 5 years, we have Kent that will people like Kent that have been able to wire together a bunch of System Center tools for stuff you can do today. So we're not just going to leave you with a vaporware promise, but Kent will leave you with some ideas on how to use the System Center suite collectively today to achieve your data center scenarios. And then I have some exciting announcements of stuff that's coming in the next version of Config Manager that I'll save for the last. But knowing me, I probably won't be able to help myself, and I'll reveal them early. But we'll try to save those for a big splash at the end. So let me jump into I talked about the poll results here. Not sure how well you can see it in the back. And I just realized today these aren't in order. They're in order of the way the question was asked, but not in order of priority. So I have to look at the number to see where they stack. But at the top of the list are patch and inventory, and there's been a lot of questions to us, concerns about our lack of a cluster patching story. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're thinking about for that. See, I already revealed something that's coming at the end. And then this was just, like I said, 650 customers polled. 85% are using our products for patching their data centers. That's a lot of servers that are using a product that hadn't had a data center focused feature added in quite some time. So I think these results spoke loudly to us, as well as our MVPs are honest about it a lot, and as well as customers, folks in this room, and other customers. So. We did want to re-engage on this topic, stop hiding from it. So here we are, and I'm the patsy they threw out here to give this message. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit about desired state configuration first, and I'll talk about settings management after. So desired state configuration. It's a platform, right? It's effectively declarative syntax and PowerShell to achieve a configuration on a server. It can assure that the configurations don't drift. Its execution can be done through a pull server. It can be pushed directly. You use a pull server when you want to get around firewall issues, and it basically pulls the config from the pull server. It's in and of itself, it's headless and agentless because the agent that executes the DSC commands is built into server, and any logging that you get is logging that is on the pull server. So when I mean headless, I mean it doesn't have a console attached to it. It is console driven when you get into Azure Automation as part of the OMS or Operations Management Suite, but it's not natively tied to a console. It does have rich online content from MSDN as well as community-driven for commandlets that can be run. And the difference really of a DSC commandlet over a full PowerShell commandlet is that it's really, like I said, it's declarative syntax, so you don't have to write every step in the PowerShell commandlet. It's the DSC agent on the server that really interprets the command and achieves the intent. And I already mentioned the last bullet. It's tied to Azure Automation, which puts that ecosystem of a service around DSC. Now, DCM, by comparison, is an end-to-end solution that can keep resources from drifting out of compliance. Sounds a lot like DSC, but it's really been client-focused because, as I mentioned, we've really been client-focused over the past several years with our product. We made an intentional choice to go client, and then server was going to be picked up by another part of the organization, and it was in pieces, but then we've learned that our config manager has stayed in the data center, even with our lack of investment in that area. So DCM, or settings management, has really been client-focused. It provides multiple channels for configuration, such as VB-Script, PowerShell, Reg, has in-console monitoring and reporting through Config Manager. It can also deliver PowerShell to servers, but not currently through the DSC declarative syntax. And I've probably given away another one of my big ending points there. Has rich content like the SCM tool and online content that can be downloaded, consumed, and imported. And it is agent-based, so it does require the config manager agent to run. So that's really the difference between the two. Now I want to compare really the stories around which solution, be it Azure Automation with its underpinnings of DSC, or Configuration Manager through Settings Management, which I still refer to as DCM. And these are basically the two tables that kind of represent the optimized tool for the role that the problem that you're trying to solve. There's a comparative term between these two that I can't take credit for, but I think it's a good way to, and I don't know the source, or I would give the original source of who said this, but the left-hand column that you're looking at there for the config manager model is really often referred to as pets, and the right-hand column is referred to as cattle. The reason being is that second primary bullet there, it's retained for years, unique configuration and unique identity, like a pet. Whereas a cattle is that, they come and go, they're identified by a role, they're a cow, and they have no unique identity typically. You don't name them because they're not going to be around that long. And so, sadly. And so to go through the list, so that's a way to we think of, that's the metaphor that we've heard used, or that I've heard used, so I'm just repeating that. I think it's a good one. So just to rattle off the bullets here, it's really for stable environments, individualized servers, and it's for where a lot of folks in the room still are, is the solution must live on premises. You're still not to a point, or maybe you'll never be to a point, where you can do a cloud-optimized solution for your private data center. Moving over to the Azure Automation with DSC, it's really optimized for rapidly changing environments. Take the retail website that has to burst capacity around holiday seasons, for example, and then they spin them down. So the servers are rapidly changing. They're really just they're not named. They're cattle. They come and go. They play a very specific function, and they're not named. You don't really have the capacity. It's not realistic to think that you can get an agent on there because their life cycle may be so short, but by the time that agent instrumentation is complete, the server's already out and reached its end of its use and it's spun down. So that's where the power of DSC being integrated into server is useful, or very useful, because it's natively in server, and it can be the change can be injected right away through let's say Azure Automation. And then, the server roles, like I said, that come and go, they're identified by role, no unique identity, and it's at least currently is optimized for cloud-based through what I'm going to show on the next slide, which if you've been to some of any of the data center sessions this time, you've probably seen this. And I'm not going to go too deep into this. I want to stay focused on the config manager side, but this is just paint the picture of where the right-hand side of the screen is really being optimized for. In that automation line, you have your patching, and you have your change management, et cetera, in that layer. But this is really the layer for, this is OMS. Think of it as the cloud version of EMS, which is client-focused, but there's still that on-prem pet model that has to be addressed, and that's the area that we're focusing on focusing some new features on for our next release of Config Manager, or upcoming releases of Config Manager. And with that, I'll turn it over to, get it past all my fluff, and now you get to actually see stuff that's working rather than my vaporware.
Well, I certainly hope it's working. So, as Jason mentioned, when working in the data center, we haven't done a whole lot the last couple of years, and I'm sitting in...
That's being kind.
in my office right next to me, I actually have a real data center team, and they kind of smile at me every time I talk about Config Manager, because they say, can you automate, can you visualize, and they go show all their fancy products that they have in the System Center suite. And we say, yeah, sure, we can do that, but it might not be built into the product as when you open up the console there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look a little at compliance settings. I'm going to look at some of the challenges that we have in different environments. And because we saw the chart earlier with the inventory and updates being the most requested, was it features or was it just,
It's the most used feature for the customers using Config Manager in the data center. Inventory and updates were at the top of the list there.
Then because of that, I just spiced up the next demo with some rich inventory just to show you that you can actually very, very easy generate some pretty fancy Excel spreadsheets, and you can also very, very easy to generate some pretty fancy reports. Of course, you won't be able to do that in just 2 minutes, but I'll show you how you get started with that. So some of the challenges that I'm being faced with every time I go into a data center project is stuff like compliance settings. When I ask a customer how they're doing on their patch management, they often go like, okay. And I say, when are you happy? When is your manager happy? And when do you really want to run away? Do you have any KPIs defined? And often I hear the answer is no, but can you help us define them? What is everybody else doing? And then I have to go in and say, well, I don't know everybody else, but I do know that you need to define some, and for your organization, you should at least have some KPIs that will tell you when you have to work hard and when you are close to goal, and you should also be able to visualize those KPIs. That's extremely important. Once we have defined them, then it's a very classic thing that for patch management, that we are kind of half the way. We might have deployed the patches, we might have them installed, but we never rebooted for whatever reason. Maybe the maintenance window was not long enough, maybe someone forgot to initiate a reboot, and so on and so forth. So we need to figure out why we are not meeting our KPIs. That's extremely important. And that we can easily do with compliance settings. All we need to know is where to look. So if you know where in registry and where in WMI, you need to go and look to figure out if a server is a reboot pending mode, then you can easily do this. We also need to be able to detect the updates that are missing. So we need to be able to detect the updates that are missing that we have deployed in the past, and also, of course, the updates that we haven't deployed yet for various different reasons. Working in different environments, like DMC environments, also comes with a few challenges. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you who have been setting up Configuration Manager in a DMC environment, you have had issues with using the wrong management point. So at one point, the external server is trying to use the internal management point and the other way around. And because of your firewall blocking that traffic, they are not able to communicate. They're not able to download their content and so on. Another challenge is your software update points. As most of you probably know, when you select the software update points, it's just random. So I'll just go ahead and select an update point, and I will stick with that until that software update point, for whatever reason, doesn't work any longer, and the client receives an error code, and then it will change over to another software update point. The problem is from time to time that some of the error codes we get back actually do not force the client to switch to another software update point. So you need to know about the error codes, you need to be able to locate them, and then you also need to go in and come up with a solution, because if you don't do that, your clients will actually not be able to scan. For management points, the good news is that in Service Pack 2 and also in vNext, we will be able to control the management point using boundary groups. So there is a little checkbox on your site settings where
Actually,
you can
the official name, I was going to say, so
typical.
awesome to rattle off. System Center Configuration Manager R2 Service Pack 1. And you can't even tweet that, I don't think. It's too long,
so we'll just call it Service Pack 2. No, but anyhow, the feature's in there. And that will solve the issue with the management point. The distribution point is already controlled by the boundary groups. But for the WSUS issue, we still have to go in and do a little work ourselves. With that, let's jump into the first demo. So I'm number 7 here. So in the seeing my monitor, yeah. So in the first demo here, I want to show a few things. So first off, I want to show how easily we can actually visualize the data that we have. And visualizing data and making sure that the manager actually sees that we have met the KPIs is extremely important to me. I've created a few reports, though I will be sharing these reports here later on. I just want to show you, just before I get started here, I just want to show you the kind of the end result. So this is a standard Power Query in Excel, and I've just retrieved the data from my own server. And you can see in here, this is kind of stuff that my manager will understand because we have some fancy colors and everything. And I don't know how many of you are really, really in love with the standard configuration manager reports. Probably some of you would like to see charts and fancy stuff like this. So with the very same query, and I have the query right here. I'll just go in and create a new report. So I'm using Report Builder. I could also be using bits. Creating my report in here, I'll just go ahead and create a blank report so you can see I'll be doing everything from scratch. The first thing we need to do is generate the data source. So I'll just use a data source, build a new one. My server is CMO1, and the database in here is CMPS1. Once I have my data source, I can go in and add in my data sets. So I use a shared data set embedded in my report, and here we go. So my first report here, and now as an IT pro, I'm 125% certain that my manager wants to see everything, but she doesn't really want to see everything. She just wants to see if I'm doing good or doing bad. And maybe she wants to see some additional information, but at first I need to really hide some of all the fluff in here. So what I will be doing is I'll just be inserting a table. And once I have that, I want my title in here. I might want my bulleting ID in here. I definitely want my % compliant, and I want my information in here as well. Running this, I mean, I'm super happy because I can see the values, but it's not really that pretty, right? And if I show this to my manager again, she will just like go do something else.
Does this happen to you a lot?
It has happened to me a lot, yeah. So I learned a few tips and tricks in here. First off, get rid of everything in here and maybe just have a line under your title. Let's see where I have that. There you go. And instead of showing % compliant as I have it right now, let's visualize it. So I've already defined my KPI. I know I need to do a better job if I'm below 85%. I know if I'm between 85 and 92%, I'm kind of happy, and if I'm above 92%, I'm super proud. So I need to somehow visualize that. What I will be doing is I will go in here and insert an extra column. In this column here, I'll be inserting an indicator. So my indicator can be any of these. I'll select this one here. Next, what I want to do is I want to tie this indicator by going into the properties. I want to tie this one here to percent compliant. So if I just find that. And it's getting late. There you go. What I want to show is actually not a percent, it's numeric. And then I go down here and specify, well, between 0 and 85. I'm not super happy. Between 85 and 92, I'll show up again in the cantina. And above 92, I'll be dancing all day. Sort of. So, again, I mean, we need to do a little more, you know, do it a little better. Like, for instance, this here, that's because of my title, right? But it starts slowly to look a little better. And the next thing I want to do is the information URL that I have here, my manager really doesn't know what it means. So I want to get rid of that. But there might be some scenarios where she wants to see the information. So I'm going in here. I'm inserting a row above. And then I'm going to insert, let me just insert a text box here. I can add in additional info. So when I have my text box, I will go into the properties and I will just name it. So as you can see here, it has a default name, and I need to name this so it makes a little sense. So I'll just call it additional info. And then I'll go down to my information that I want to hide. I go into the text box properties here, go to visibility, and by default it's shown. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hide it, and then I'm going to say, well, based on what we toggle on my first box here, I might be showing that or I might be not showing that. So just by, you know, spending a few seconds, I mean, literally, this just took me like 2 or 3 minutes. I have taken a standard query, and no, it's not pretty, but we don't have, I mean, if you want to stay here during the party, we can make it pretty, right?
That sounds like fun.
That sounds like fun. But you'll be able to see some of the other reports that I'm going to show you that they are, I mean, they are based on the very, very same foundation. I just had a little more time when those were created. So let me go ahead and close this one here. So if I'm looking at some of the other reports, one of the more interesting things is that a lot of our customers, where I go out, they say, well, we are compliant. I go, perfect. How compliant are you actually? Well, we are, and then they throw out a number. The last customer was 100% compliant, which I found kind of interesting, because when I ran this report here, they had servers that had been running for more than 20,000 hours. And I'm like, how can you be compliant if this one here hasn't rebooted since October 2012? And of course it turned out that they were not really that compliant. So this report here, and again I'll make all the queries and what have you available here. This report will show me a few things that are extremely important in the data center. I'll be able to see the uptime in hours, very interesting. I'll also be able to see the last reboot date. But as you know, we have virtual machines and they go spin up and down and up and down, and then they're removed. So I'll also be able to see the inventory date in here. So if the inventory date is recent, but still I have my last reboot date that is like back from 2012, something is wrong. So this is like a clear identifier that we have, our processes, they are not working, not at all. So we need to be able to figure out if some of these servers here are in a reboot pending mode. We also need to be able to figure out why they are not compliant. Another example, and again, as I mentioned, these examples here will be made available. Another one would be a kind of a dashboard report. So in here, I can go in and this time I'll just select all desktop and server clients. So this report here will show me for this specific collection here, what are my top 25 clients? What are my top 25 updates? extremely important because I need to fix this, and I only have, like the rest of you, 28 hours a day, so we need to prioritize our time. In here, a few tips and tricks. I can go in and say, well, I only want to focus on the updates that we have actually approved. So we don't want to see compliance for all the other updates. And as you can see here, I have something that looks like a domain controller missing 6 updates. So that raises another question. When can I actually patch this server here? I won't be able to patch it right now. I mean, it's not a computer, it's not a PC, I mean. So we need to be able to find the next available maintenance window. And here I can see, well, the next available maintenance window is in 2020. Wow. So, I mean, you'll be surprised how many times you see this. Okay. Now I have identified the issue, and now after that I need to do something about it, right? But 2020, that's still a long way from here. I'll be able to see the updates that are required. So this report is actually giving me some pretty valuable data. If I just go back, I'll also be able to see the activity down here. So I can see for this one here, I have I don't have anything. See, let's just go back again. See if this one here is, there you go. I only have one server. This is a small demo environment, but I can see the activity in here. And a question that I get a lot is, how can it be that after we moved from Config Manager 2007 into 2012, it takes so long time before we actually get our state messages back? In 2007, they came pretty quickly, but here, sometimes I have to wait days before I can actually see that the update is installed. And the answer lies in the default behavior. So when you go ahead and deploy an update, a software update group, if you use let's just go ahead and do this manually. I'll automate this in a few seconds here. So if I just go in and select a collection, all systems, then this is the default detail level. So what you saw in CMO7 was that now we're downloading updates, now we have a reboot pending now, and so on and so forth. What you will see in here is that, okay, now we're compliant, or now something failed. But it might take a while before it actually gets to that point. So there's a little difference there. Going into the Excel spreadsheet, I promised I wanted to talk a little about inventory. If I go in and create something similar to that, a common question is in the data center, so how many different servers do we have? How many virtual servers do we have? All of those questions. And when you go into a meeting, I mean, you can't have a report because there might be like 25 different questions. That means you have to create 25 different reports. So you need to have a data set, and then you need to be able to go in and, play around with that data set. And the cool thing is that my manager will be able to do that. She is so much better working with Excel compared to me. So all I need to do is just give her the right data set. What I do in here is I have Power Queries enabled. It's an add-on to Office 2013. You just need to go into Excel and enable it. So it is already in there and add in. After that, I will go in and say, well, I want to grab some data from my SQL Server database. I have a SQL Server, and it's called CTCMO1. Like that. And then for this demo, I'll just do a quick one. So I'm just going to select everything from the computer system view in here.
Get a misspell and typo on computer.
Again, it's a little after midnight my time, so that's quite all right. We're still waiting for a decent spell checker in here. which is why I have
That's why
Jason.
I'm up here. I'm just like just taking bug notes.
See what I got here. Ah, thank you.
So it's an interactive project.
Yeah. We'll turn it into a Q&A. There you go. Thanks. So I have my data in here. What I needed to do now is I need to go in, and select each of the columns, remove the columns that we don't want to see, and I might have to change some of the data types on some of the other columns. Okay, I need to give my manager a decent data set. I'm not going to do that here. So I'm just going to close and load this. Once I've done that, you'll see how I get kind of the same data set as you saw before with the software updates. I'm going to insert a power view. So when I'm inserting a power view, it will analyze my data, and it will come up with something that it believes that I want to look at. I couldn't care less. I don't want to look at my resource IDs. I want to have something that actually makes sense. So let's just go over here and remove the data in here. So what I want to see in here is, as I mentioned, a question that I get quite often is stuff like, so how many machines do we have per manufacturer? How many models do we have? So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting the manufacturer. I'll go in and add the manufacturer in here. And since I didn't in my query, I didn't, write anything about the operating system or what have you, so I'll have a big mix of all the machines we have in here. But right now I can see the machines that we have, so I can see the different Lenovo's and so on and so forth. And the last thing I want to do is, see where we had that. Just want to go in here, and then I want to make a count on my name. So right now I can see how many different versions of how many different Lenovo's I have, how many, whoops, did I mess that up? See, what did I select? I really don't want a timestamp. I don't know why I would want that, but if you want a timestamp, you can definitely add it in. Plus, it's going to be super easy for my manager as well to go in here and play around with the data. So this is what I mean by just make sure that you create the data set, and everybody else in the organization, they don't even, the learning curve in here is not that high. It's much easier, it's much more dynamic compared to go in and creating custom reports and so on. With that, let me just go back to the other part of the demo, the reboot pending part. So we need to be able to identify when and why a server is in a reboot pending mode. And as I've seen it, we have like three different reasons why. We could have the config manager agent actually added the server or put the server in a reboot pending mode. So what I've done here is I've created a CI. And if I look at my script in here, you'll see that this script here is just looking in my client SDK in WMI. And in there I have a reboot pending property. And if this one here is true, then it means that this server here is actually in a reboot pending mode. I can easily demonstrate that by just going into PowerShell. Here you can see the same. So I'm invoking a WMI method. I'm connecting to the CCM client SDK. So this is the client namespace, even though I'm on a server, right? And then I'm just running this, executing this. And down here you'll see whether or not I'm in a reboot pending mode. So there you go. Currently this machine here is not. So otherwise it would have been true. So that's one way of figuring out if I'm in a reboot pending mode. Another method, and you need, in my opinion, you need all three of them. Another one could be if your software updates, your Windows Update agent actually put your machine in a reboot pending mode. If that's the case, then you will have this registry key here. So you will have reboot required, and then you will have a list of the updates there. So it could be that for some reason, someone installed some updates outside of Configuration Manager. So which is the reason why you cannot just rely on the Config Manager CI. You also need this one. A third one would be my file rename operations. Well, technically, this does not put the machine in a reboot pending mode, but I do have one or more files that are waited to be renamed, and that will not happen until I actually restart my machine. So at this point, I'm a little bit unsure what state my server is in, because I do not know why the files has to be renamed and so on and so forth. So I definitely want to be able to track this. That I've done, and if you're new to compliance items, then you won't be able to deploy a CI. What you do is you create what we call a baseline, and then you deploy that baseline. So in your baseline, you can add in as many CIs as you want. To my knowledge, there is no limit. Yeah. And you can also add in software updates that you want to look for, and so on and so forth. And once you have that, if you want to, you can remediate. So you can do that in the CI, but in a data center, you don't want to do that unless you're extremely brave, because we have something called maintenance windows. So you want to be able to track the compliance, and you can do that in your monitoring node. So in here, I can see, well, I do have one that is not compliant, and that is the server, my site server. And if I look at my site server here, go into the Config Manager client, you'll also see in configurations here that I have my Ignite server pending restart, and that I'm non-compliant on that one. And if I just view the report in here, it will tell me that I'm non-compliant on my file rename operations. So if I go down to my registry key, I will just have a list of files in here.
So we have added data center management features. You just had to build them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can we go back to that one?
Sure thing.
So that was like demo number one on inventory. So what we really want you to take away from this is that you might not have all the reports that you want to have, but it's super easy for you to go in and use Excel and Power Queries, create some Power Views in there, and the learning curve is really not that steep. So you all know what you have to do on Monday. Once you're done Monday, then Tuesday morning, here's what you're going to do. Because for patching, besides working with figuring out who's in a reboot pending mode, what are your KPIs and so on, the biggest issue that I see is planning. When we walk into a data center, I usually categorize my servers into 3 categories. So we have all the servers that for some reason the service owner wants to maintain 120%. He or she doesn't trust us, and I have no idea why, but they certainly don't. So they just want to get the updates down there, and then they want to log on, and then they want to install them manually, kind of cherry pick the updates, and they promise to keep them compliant. But those are the servers that will track in the server restart report, because they never do so. But that's just how it is. Then we have the servers that we can just automatically restart. So we will go in, plan some maintenance windows, we will have some processes, and then we can just go in and patch those. And then we have the third group of servers, which is what I normally refer to as the group of servers that are kind of logically grouped together. So this is some of the stuff that you're going to touch on later, where we might have some cluster resources, or we might have some individual servers that for some reason just can restart one at a time. So you might have like 8 servers, and only one of them can be down. And once it's up, it's not enough to be compliant. You also need to run some scripts maybe to figure out if this service is running and if that service has started, and so on and so forth. So there are planning for patching servers in the data center might be a little different compared to patching clients. All of this has to be all of this has to go into your collection. So you need a good collection hierarchy in here. You need a collection hierarchy that is not super complex, that is dynamic enough, and also will allow for service owners to go in and change their maintenance windows, because service owners, they always do that. I mean, they're like, I need to be able to dynamically change the maintenance window almost from day to day, even though often there is no reason why they change the maintenance window, but they might also have good reasons, so we need to take that into consideration. And then tracking compliance, I just showed you some of the reports that will enable us to do that. Let's move into the next demo. I'm on, yep. So in the next demo here, I will mainly focus on automating the patch deployment, but first off, I want to figure out how we're doing on the maintenance windows, because as you just saw, I had another maintenance window coming up in 2020. It's going to be a long session if we have to wait for that. So what I have in here is, I have a couple of PowerShell scripts, and the first PowerShell script that I have in here, what this will do is it will just get the maintenance windows that we have defined right now. So if something is wrong, if my servers are not patching, then I definitely want to figure out what kind of maintenance windows do I have. And when I run this, I will have an output file, so it can be a CSV or it can be an HTML, and I will just generate a report. So run this, it will take a few seconds. I have a small environment. And then go into my demo, and here I have my maintenance report. So it tells me a few things in here. First off, when I look, I can see I do have some different collections. So I do have a maintenance window on 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. I can also see in here that the duration for some of them are just 180 minutes. Those of you who attended Johan's session the other day, he also mentioned something about maintenance windows and best practices. And what we usually recommend is that your maintenance window is minimum 4 hours. Besides that, and that would be your monthly maintenance window, you might want to have a quarterly maintenance window if you can convince your service owner to that, to have a quarterly maintenance window for 8 hours, just to catch up if something didn't get installed. I've seen, I wouldn't say many times, but I have seen that updates are not being installed because the maintenance window is not long enough, or even worse, that updates are being installed, but a restart is not initiated because the maintenance window is not long enough. So we definitely want to be able to trace that. So in here, again, now I know, and I can also see that this looks okay. It's a software update maintenance window. This one here, it's an OSD maintenance window. And again, none of you in this room would ever you would ever go in and create an OSD maintenance window, right, for patching. But it happens for some of my colleagues when I let them into the environment. No, it doesn't. So the next thing I want to do is I want to define some maintenance windows. And when we're defining maintenance windows, we usually have a process that kind of is very close to Patch Tuesday. And we all know you can go in and create a maintenance window every Monday, Wednesday, and so on and so forth. But what we really want to do is we really want to have a process almost like this, where I have my collection names, and then for each of these collections, I have kind of an offset to Patch Tuesday. So for my first maintenance window, which is like my alpha, then that would be the day after Patch Tuesday. And then I have my beta, that would be like 3 days after, and then I just go into my normal production maintenance windows in here. And this, we don't have that feature in Configuration Manager right now. So I have an Excel spreadsheet, and in this Excel spreadsheet, when we start defining this, we already have all of the Patch Tuesdays. So we just used a PowerShell script to generate all the Patch Tuesdays for a year, and then me as a service owner, I just grab the information from a database or go in manually and fill in the information about the different maintenance windows. I will have a start time, a duration, and then the window type. So this I have added to my Excel file, and I have the very same information in here in a CSV file. So the CSV file here is actually what I'm going to import. So let's just close this one. This script is import CM maintenance window. So we'll have a file name, and it's in my demo. There you go, maintenance solution CSV. And now I have two different parameters. I have preview and I have production. Preview will simply just be like, this is something we pretend, we are not really doing anything. Just allow me to preview what I'm doing before I'm ruin everything. So in here I can see that we're going to set a maintenance window on these collections. Once we have done that, this is going to be the offset number of days, and I will have a maintenance window duration and the start time. So when I'm happy with that, I'll just go in and run the very same again, and this time I'll just go ahead and say production. So now it's configuring my maintenance windows, and if I go into my software updates, in here I will have, let's just do a sort like this, I will have my SUM server maintenance window 1, 2, and so on and so forth.
We're going to see if we can get some more tabs on the collection property sheet in the next release. Maybe a third row.
That would be kind of cool. So in here you can see I have a 4-hour maintenance window, and it is a real software update schedule. So this is like one of the issues that I have. I have no idea how many maintenance windows I have. I don't know about the duration. I just know that sometimes we run into issues with reboot pendings and so on. The other issue I have is all these service owners. And it's not like I don't like service owners. They're friendly people most of the time. But they want to be in control. And being in control means that they want to go in and define their own maintenance windows. So they want to log into their server. They want to have a shortcut, and then they will be able to see when is the next available maintenance window, and can I somehow not have a maintenance window, or can I define another one? There are, in my experience, two different ways that we work with adding servers into collections. We either use a query in here that is based on hardware inventory. So you tattoo something in registry, and then you say, okay, now you're a member of maintenance window 3, and then we'll go into the configuration MOV file and extend that and do all of that fancy stuff. I'm going to show you that in a few seconds. Or another method, let's see if I have that on 5 here. There you go. This one here is looking at a group in Active Directory. So if my server here is member of this specific group in Active Directory, then it should be placed into this maintenance window. There are pros and cons to both of these methods here. I mean, in using the inventory, what happens if your inventory schedule, if your inventory agent is not trustworthy, if that doesn't run, then I mean you will never ever be able to change the maintenance windows in here. And using the Active Directory groups, you have to do a system group discovery. Of course, we can go in and say only do that against this specific this specific organizational unit. But it's again, and it's another moving part that we have to monitor. We have a little solution here, and this solution, we're going to make this solution here available right after Ignite. This solution has a configuration file. In the configuration file, I have something called tool mode. It can be either SCCM, meaning that we're going to use the inventory, or it can be ADDS, which means that we are going to use Active Directory directory services. So we're actually going to create or make sure that you are added to the right group and so on and so forth. Then I have an AD group prefix. So you can go in here and say, well, all of my groups are named like this. So we will go into a specific organizational unit and look for all of your groups with this prefix here. We also have a folder ID because we like folders, unlike some of the other ones that I know that don't like folders. But the cool thing about a folder is I can go in and query a specific folder and say, hey, list all the collections I have in this specific folder and only show me the collection that has, let's say, a maintenance window. That is very, very useful. Finding the folder ID is something you do in PowerShell. So in here, you can see I have a small PowerShell query. So I'm just importing the configuration manager module. And once I've done that, I'll go in and get an item, and then I will point down and say, well, in this specific folder called software updates, this is the ID that I want to have. So once I've done that, it's going to give me the folder ID, and that's the folder ID that I just copied into the configuration file. So once I make a change, and me would be the service owner, then we have added in some mail support. So we're actually going to send a mail to the real administrator and say, hey, someone here changed the maintenance window. You don't have to do that. You can just remove the functionality in here. But it's kind of nice to be able to maybe update a database or something like that. So we're going to send a mail to anyone who cares. So right now, I have an SCCM. So this means that it's going to use my inventory. And if I start my maintenance window here, just run this with PowerShell. So now I'm the service owner. I'm going to connect. So what it will do right now is it will show all the collections that I have in the software update folder that contains a maintenance window. I can also see that I'm currently in maintenance window 3. I can see that because it's kind of highlighted. I will also be able to see down here that the maintenance windows are not configured for this system, and then it's basically just literally just listing all my maintenance windows. I want to be in maintenance window 1. So I'm just going in here and adding that. But before I do that, let me just show you. If I go in and open up my inventory agent log file. So as soon as I go in and add this one here, what it will do is it will create a registry key that we have tattooed, and then it's going to do an inventory. So right now it's just going to gather information about me being in that specific maintenance window, and then it will update my collection. So if I go into registry here, you'll see, if I go into HKey Global Machine, software, then we have something in here called Smart Maintenance Windows. And there you can see I have my maintenance window 1. So I've created a collection based on this piece of hardware information. So if I go back into my console again and look at my maintenance window 1, if I look at this query in here, oops. This one here is based on my group. So now I'm going to demonstrate how you're going to create a new query. So we have a class here called Cortec, and in here I have my maintenance window name. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going in, and you can already see I have maintenance window 1. And there you go. So once I get this collection here updated, it will just go in and be a part of this specific maintenance window. So as I mentioned, we have 2 different ways of doing this. The other method, if I go into my configuration XML file, that is to change the tool mode to ADDS, Active Directory, Directory Services. So if you want to use that instead, next time you start or run the window in here, you'll see it's going to get your AD groups. So this time it's only listing the AD groups that I have in that specific organizational unit. So right now I'm not a member of any of these groups, and the process is more or less the same. So I'm going to add myself to maintenance window 2, and it's going to add me to the group. And if I go into Active Directory, oh, I didn't show you before that it was not a member, but trust me, I'm a consultant. I mean, I'm also a nice guy. So, so in here, oops, I added it into maintenance window number 2. There you go. So here you can see I have my CMO1 and I also have DCO1. So this is just like 2 different ways that you can let the service owners go in and define the next available maintenance window, because there will be scenarios where you won't be able to go in and select the maintenance windows for them. With that, can we move back to the slides?
Sure. I'm adding a lot of value. I hit the 5 button every 20 minutes or so.
I don't have a whole lot of slides back left. We have the last scenario we have in here is kind of a typical data center scenario. In the IT department, we have a vision. We have a vision that we want to standardize everything. We want to visualize, we want to automate, we want to simplify. We want to make sure that we can go home before 5 o'clock. And we can only do that if we're smart. We also want to document, and that's usually what we realize when it's like, almost 5 o'clock and we go like, gee, and then you have to sit down for half an hour and document whatever you have done. This we can achieve if we kind of use the entire System Center suite. So then the next example here is using Service Manager to document what changes we are going to make, and also what changes we have made, and if something went wrong during those changes. We're going to use Orchestrator to automate a lot of the process, a lot of the stuff that goes on. We're going to use Configuration Manager to initiate all the updates. And all the updates, that can be, in patching an application, it can be software updates, it can be a config manager or agent that needs to be updated, or an ops manager agent that needs to be updated. It can be anything. Once we have done that, then we are able to actually define a standard server. Because right now, can you define a standard server in your environment and say, okay, if you have this baseline, let's call the baseline GA5, then everyone in the organization knows we have these 5 applications, we're at this level, and so on and so forth. Probably not. In the example here, I have defined a standard server, so I need to have SCCM for management, Ops Manager for monitoring. We need to have some backup, we need to have some protection, and we also need to patch our servers once in a while, and then of course we need to have the right server tools. In the real world, this is often what it looks like. I mean, in here I have different versions, so on some servers I might have a DPM agent, on another server I don't have a DPM agent, and so on and so forth. Some servers I might not even have Ops Manager. So the ideal solution is here to define a baseline and then somehow raise all the servers we have in here, maybe one by one according to their maintenance window, but at one point we need to raise all of them. And it keeps going on. Once you have raised all of them, then you just need to go in and define another baseline, because now Microsoft has released some new patches and so on and so forth. So this is kind of the demo in here.
I can do the button.
You can do the button.
Yeah.
And now I actually, this is how you shut down your servers in a data center. Turn off. And then I just want to spin up the next environment. I'm starting the next environment. So the next environment in here is the complete System Center suite. So we have Ops Manager, Service Manager, and so on and so forth. And while these are starting, it will take about 30 seconds in my server here. Let me just start the demo server 1 as well. I just want to, oops. What did it say? Ooh, not enough memory. That's not going to be an issue because I only need this one here for like 5 seconds. So this is a technical preview. And in the technical preview, what I wanted to show you in here is the management point stuff. And I think I fat-fingered the password.
That'll take about 7 minutes.
It might. So what we're going to do is, we're going to switch this one off, and then we'll...
Oh, yeah. And this is super simple stuff that Kent had to go do on our behalf because of our data center lack of focus.
So let's go in here. So what I have for this demo here is, first off, we have the baseline defined. So in Service Manager in here, we have some knowledge base or some knowledge articles in here, and I have a baseline. The previous baseline, we just gave a value, called it KA2, and that was like maybe a month ago when we raised all the servers. The new baseline in here, if I look at the baseline, you will be able to see in here that I have documented, or actually my colleague was kind enough to do all of that. He has documented all the changes that we're going to go through. So this is the state that we expect to find the servers in after we're done. Very important. So in here, you'll see kind of a complete documentation. These are the registry keys that we're going to add. This is further information and so on and so forth. Right? Once it has done that, then I will be able to see the attached log file. So it's going to generate a log file for every change that it's going to go through. And if I go in here and look at the old article, you'll see in the old article in here that I have some related items. And here I can see the servers that has actually been through that baseline process. So in these servers here, I would be able to go in, view at the information, and I can see if something is wrong, if an incident was generated during the process because it didn't have a DPM agent or it failed to install the DPM agent or anything like that. So we have kind of complete documentation in here. The next thing we have is see why I have that? I have Operations Manager. Because one thing I don't know when that will be fixed, but I promised myself I wouldn't raise the question. But we have a little feature in Configuration Manager that can put the Ops Manager agent into a maintenance mode. I don't know how many of you actually have that working. So what we do in here is
over here.
So what we do instead is we're using an orchestrator runbook to add the server into a maintenance window. So you can see or maintenance mode. So you can see right now I don't have any, none of my servers are in a maintenance mode. So the next thing I want to have a look at, that is the sequence itself. So if I go into my server in here, then you'll see I have a task sequence, a baseline demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the demo, and then I will just go back in here and kind of go through the task sequence, and then we can jump between the servers and see what's going on. So on my demo 1 server, this is one of the servers that I really want to upgrade. And you can see here I have my task sequence deployed, so I'm just going to install that one. And what you're going to see is we're using MDT. We're using MDT because we want to use Orchestrator. So we are going to use the Orchestrator runbooks. Once we have downloaded the toolkit, what we're going to do is we're going to read the documentation. We're going to start the process. We're going to tattoo the information that we need to tattoo. Once we have installed and raised everything to the right baseline, then we're going to write the documentation back and say here everything is good or something might be wrong. It's also going to place the server in a maintenance mode in Operations Manager. So this will just take, I timed it earlier this morning, it took like 5 minutes. So if I go back into Configuration Manager and look at my task sequence here, then will see that the first we are doing is we are just setting some variables. So these are the variables that will go into registry. In registry, we have information about the baseline being applied. So what is the actual baseline? So these are basically just, information about the config manager agent and so on and so forth. This will all go in here. Then we're going to do a computer check. So we have a PowerShell script here. So what this will do is it will just go in and figure out what do we actually need to apply. Figure out if we have any of the versions already installed. We're going to execute the runbook. So we will change the asset status in Service Manager. Right now, the asset status in Service Manager is like it's deployed. So once I start the deployment in here, you will actually see I have a deployment going on. So if I move into the Service Manager console, I can see I have a baseline deployment going on in here. We're going to put Ops Manager on the machine into a maintenance mode here. And I just want to switch back to my server and look at where we are. So now you can see here, we're just documenting information before the baseline. Kind of super important to know what the world looked like before and what it looks like after. So that's the point we are at right now. Let's just go back in here. Once we have done that, then we are going to baseline the software. So what you have in baseline software is basically just, installing the different agents, installing your software updates, applying the patches, and so on and so forth. And once we're done with that, we're going to do a post check. Just want to verify that everything is okay. And then we will remove the machine from the collection. We don't want to see the task sequence again. And we're going to document everything. So this would be like a typical scenario from end to end, where we bring all of our servers into compliance. If it fails, I'm not saying this demo will fail, of course it won't, but if it fails on, let's say, 15 out of 1,000 servers, it's not that big of a problem because you have all your incidents in Service Manager, so you have knowledge about what actually failed. Today you might not have that knowledge, and I mean, it's software, so sometimes stuff goes wrong. So let's just go back to this one here and see. So right now we can see it's just running an action. It didn't discover a DPM agent, so it's going to do whatever it has to do when that occurs. And if I go back into my operations manager in here, you can see now it is actually in a maintenance mode. I don't know if you can see that, but I can just zoom in here. So we did place the server in a maintenance mode. So yes, Configuration Manager can do that. You did a good job.
I knew it.
So this is just going to take, like 3 more minutes, and then it will be done. And once it's done, it will go back into my Service Manager that I have right in here. And then it's going to update the article ID just like I have here for KA2. So it will upload the log files generated and everything, and the Service Manager guys will know exactly what went wrong and what went good. With that, we still have like 5, 6, 7 minutes left. I don't know, you want to?
Yeah, we can cut over to my part and then come back and see the results. So first off, we're not adding everything Kent just talked about, so I don't want to get your hopes all high that you can just go do this in the next version of the product. We got 5 years of stuff to make up time on. But we are putting some emphasis on data center management for improvements there, and I'm just going to talk through those next. First off, we're adding cluster-aware management with intelligence and targeting, scheduling, maintenance windows, and node state awareness. That should certainly help with some of the maintenance window. Thank you. To help with some of the maintenance window rodeo that Ken had to go through to get that all to work. We're investigating DSC integration, and we're a little rusty in data center, so I'm using this as an opportunity to call for feedback. If you use DSC and you see a use case, a really important use case for integration into Config Manager, I'd really want to talk to you. So I would ask that, and this may blow up on me if everyone comes up here, but if you could drop your card off, I will set up a follow-up conversation to kind of walk through the scenarios so that we as we investigate it, we're investigating and thinking about DSC integration the right way. We don't want to just throw it in there and say, we integrated with DSC, but it's not solving your problems. So we want to make sure that we get your feedback on that. And then the last piece isn't purely a data center management piece, but we are adding the ability to monitor your client deployments through in-console monitoring. So when you are deploying the agent to a server, at least you know that part's done, and you can get that as part of your baseline to know that the server hasn't, the agent's been installed. Because without the agent, none of this other stuff is going to work. A quick click through of our cluster-aware management design. This is logical. We're working on this now, so unfortunately I don't have anything to demo, but I'm just going to kind of walk through the key principles of it. On the job to be done is obviously apply, in this example, apply updates to a production cluster, but maintaining uptime. Sounds easy enough. Scenario one is you want X% of your servers. In this case, you want 75% of your servers in the cluster to be up during patching. This could also be, as Kent mentioned, logical groupings of servers. Maybe not exactly a cluster, but a group of servers that you need some kind of uptime awareness. And then scenario two is patching my cluster in a declared order. You want to go, you want to do a certain particular order or roll through your servers in a particular order inside of that maintenance window, but you want to be sure that order integrity is maintained throughout. If you have more scenarios, I'd love to hear those too, but these are the key ones that we're going after in this next release. And we've got a very simple UI mock-up. And I made a joke about collections earlier, and guess where this tab is going to go? Right there in that collections node. So there will probably be a third row, depending on localization problems. Another thing I want to call out that I just caught right before the session when I was looking at the deck is the file extension. I fat-fingered that to PSQ, which is the product studio query we use to actually check for bugs in our database. That's probably not what you're going to run as your pre and post maintenance script. More likely going to be a PS1, but I just wanted to fess up to that so that Twitter didn't blow up that I said you had to run product studio queries on your Exchange servers. That should be PS1, and as you can see here, what we're showing is the two methods I mentioned before. Keep X% by a drop down, X% of your server online at all times in that maintenance window, or specify the maintenance sequence, and then you have the move up down option in the UI to order the way you want those servers updated. And then the pre and post actions are really just actions that you want to run on each node of the cluster in this process in that particular maintenance window. And we're thinking about other applicability, other scenarios where this is applicable. You could take, embedded devices might be a similar, more task worker devices might have a similar requirement, even though they're not necessarily a cluster, they do have that similar type of process where they can't all be down at the same time. And we're also looking at other parts of the product where pre and post scripts would make sense. I'm sure many of you know where you think they should go, but we're looking at other areas to apply this effort. And the reason I'm calling out the other scenarios related to this is that there is cluster-aware updates native in Server 2012. We're doing it independent of what's in Server, so we can go all the way back to Server 2008 with this model. And all the logic is inside of config manager. It's not something inside of Server. So this is what we're adding. I'll close with the investigation of DSC. I've already talked to you about this. Honestly, if you use it and you also use Config Manager and you have ideas on how we should integrate, drop your card off right here on the podium. I will reach out to you sometime after Ignite when everyone's rested up and either have a group call or contact you individually and just hear your stories, because we do want to collect your feedback on that, because you honestly know more about it than we do at this point. With that, do you want to cut back and see?
Yeah, sure. We can see if it actually succeeded. I'm the only one standing between you and the party right now, so
that's a dangerous spot to stand.
So my task sequence did succeed, and if I go into my article ID in here, I will have some related items. And in here you can see that my demo server 1 just finished, last modified 9:56, which is like the local time I have on this machine here. And I will be able to go in and view information about what actually went on in here. I have some history. So all the changes that we made, we will have history in here. And this is, as I mentioned, super, super important, because if something goes wrong, we need to know when and how and why it actually went wrong. So we do have support for the data center using Configuration Manager.
Great. Thanks, Kent.
Yeah.
Finish up with just a technical resource slide that Kent added here for your offline exploration. And give us your feedback. Thanks for your time. Thanks so much, Kent. You've done an awesome job making our product better. We applaud you for that. With that, we have 62, 61, 60 now seconds for questions.
So the question was, how do we get the files? I'll tweet about it. So when you wake up tomorrow, 10, 11 o'clock, there should be a tweet out. I actually do have that. So yeah, I'll tweet that as well.
You're just giving this stuff away?
Yeah, but I'm going to meet all these people here at the party, so they're going to give me.
Oh, low blow.
So yeah, thanks for coming.